This all happened back when I was still a student. At the time, my family and I were living in the United States, so learning to drive was just part of the deal. I had studied hard, finally got my driver's license, saved up money for a whole year, then borrowed a bit from my dad to buy my very first car, a beat-up old used car. One summer evening, I was driving to pick up my girlfriend from work. After she got off, we planned to cruise around for a while and then grab some food. That night, we were both in such a good mood. I cranked the music up loud, and we sang along together inside the car. Since the air conditioning in my clunker was broken, our windows were rolled down, so there we were, shouting and laughing, making a racket as we drove. Eventually, we hit a quiet, deserted road, no other cars in sight. Feeling bold, I pressed down on the gas and took off. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights flickered from behind us, hitting the inside of the car. My girlfriend saw them too and quickly turned the music down. Even though I was your typical rebellious teen, the thought of getting a ticket was terrifying. If my father found out, it'd probably be grounded and from driving altogether. So I hit the gas, hoping to shake off the cops, but my junker couldn't go very fast, and before I knew it, the squad car caught up. The police siren blared, ordering us to pull over. As we stopped, I was panicking. Man, if my dad hears about this, I'm dead. At the same time, I cooperated, handing over my documents as the officer asked. All I could think about was keeping this from my dad. I wasn't even paying attention to the cop's face. In the end, we got slapped with a yellow ticket. That night, the mood between me and my girlfriend completely soured. Back home, I kept this all a secret from my dad. Over the next few days, I worked extra hours, determined to come up with the money to pay the fine. But strangely, the ticket never arrived in the mail. It wasn't until the beginning of the next month, when I got paid, that my girlfriend and I took the ticket to the courthouse. Ready to settle it, we approached the front desk, told the lady there why we were there. As I reached for my wallet to pay, she smiled and said, "You don't actually have to pay this ticket." I looked at her, puzzled. What did she mean? She explained that the ticket was invalid. The officer who wrote it had died a long time ago. She told us the story one summer. That cop was chasing a speeding car, lost control, and crashed into a tree by the side of the road. He was seriously injured and died from his wounds. Big eyes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but the lady laughed softly and said, "Every summer, it's actually not uncommon for someone to come by here trying to pay a ticket issued by that late officer." She added that even though it's a familiar story, she still found it kind of amusing every time she saw one of those tickets. Minus this had all happened while I was a cop in a little town called Keyu County. One winter night, my partner and I were on patrol. The town was pretty peaceful, with hardly ever anything happening late at night. Mostly just the occasional restless kid, staying up too late, racing around on modified bikes like some kind of street gang. That night, we were driving slowly through the town's old deserted district. This area was full of abandoned buildings and shuttered shops. After dark, it was basically empty, though a few of those unoccupied buildings still had security guards looking after them. My partner and I were rolling along in the cruiser, chatting about life and small stuff, when suddenly we heard a man scream coming from an abandoned building ahead to our right. Right after that, a security guard bolted out of the building and ran straight toward our car. My partner slammed on the brakes just in time to avoid hitting him. The guy was sweating, terrified, practically crying, babbling nonsense as he stood in front of our patrol car. We stepped out and I tried to calm him down, telling him to take a breath and explain what happened. The security guard said, "Look up there. Do you see that office with the curtains open?" I looked up and asked, "Where exactly?" He said, "Third floor, the one with the curtains pulled back." I said, "Yeah, I see it. The guard told us." When I was making my rounds, I went into that office just now, and I saw an old woman. She had her back to me, staring out the window. At first, I thought it was just some homeless person who had wandered in. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. When I got close enough to tap her on the shoulder, she suddenly spun around fast. Her face, that's the thing, her face was all mouth. The part above the mouth was just a huge black hole, and that hole kept spinning inward, like some kind of vortex. Then the old woman pointed a finger at me and said, "If you bother me again, I'll take your life." Then she started laughing, a old, shrill laugh, and her hair floated in the air, like someone had just turned on a fan in the office. Terrified, I bolted out of the office and ran here. After listening to the security guard's story, I glanced over at my partner. He just shook his head slowly, confused and unable to understand what I was saying. I helped the guard sit down, then asked my partner if this could be some sort of mental illness or hallucination. He said he didn't know, so we decided to ask the security guard for his supervisor's number and called him. When the supervisor understood the situation, he said he'd be there right away. About 10 minutes later, the security supervisor arrived. He got out of his car and walked toward us. The older guard stayed sitting by the roadside. I explained what had happened and asked if his subordinate had any criminal record or history of mental illness that might explain hallucinations. He looked embarrassed and said, "Officer, no, he doesn't have anything like that." Actually, this was the first time. Several security guards sent to work in this building had all seen the strange old woman inside. If they disturbed her, she threatened to kill them. Because of this, most guards assigned here quit after a few days or were asked to be transferred elsewhere. And the one who stayed the longest, the one who now supervises security, that's me. But besides the faceless old woman, this abandoned building holds even scarier things. Still, just to be safe, I'll take her in with me for a sweep. Make sure no homeless people or thieves have broken in. You should come in too. Confirm for yourselves. After hearing the supervisor's words, I turned to my partner and asked, "Want to come look inside?" At that moment, he was staring up at the window of the third highness floor office. Then he turned to me, eyes wide, face pale, sweat dripping from his forehead, and said, I think he'll stay here. You to go in." So the three of us, me, the older guard, and the supervisor, went inside and searched around. It's just a deserted office building. Honestly, it was pretty creepy, but we didn't see anyone or anything scary. As for my partner, he still refuses to tell me what exactly he saw when he looked up at that third meanest floor window. I have a friend who became a cop right after he graduated. He volunteered for the traffic unit, and when he first started, something struck him as really strange. He told me that any time there's a major traffic accident, the people involved often share similarities. Once, soon after joining, he investigated a crash with multiple deaths. When checking the identities of the victims, he found that the drivers of the two cars were neighbors living upstairs and downstairs in the same apartment building. At first, he suspected something shady was going on, so he talked it over with a senior officer, Sato Minas-san. But Sato just told him not to worry, said it was a pure coincidence. Though Sato said that, my friend couldn't accept such a strange coincidence. He told Sato he didn't believe in coincidences like that, that something must be off. My friend kept obsessing over this, which annoyed Sato. So Sato said, "I used to feel the same way you do now, but the more cases you handle, the more you get used to it." He told him, "Let me tell you, the most unbelievable coincidence I ever handled involved a single case. There was this terrible crash on the highway. Deadly, with serious injuries. My team and I rushed to the scene. The scene shocked me. The horror of what I saw stills with me. Some victims were thrown from vehicles, others crushed and trapped inside. It was brutal. A total of 7 people died. When we checked their identities, something terrifying stuck out. All 7 were born the exact same day. He was stunned and baffled. He said, "That kind of thing, that kind of coincidence, there's got to be something wrong with that." So he shared his doubts with his colleagues. But the more experienced cops just brushed him off. They said if there was anything seriously suspicious, they'd look into it. Accidents happen every day, and sometimes coincidences like this occur. So don't sweat it. Since no suspicious clues emerged, he eventually accepted it as just an ordinary coincidence. After that, he ran into similar situations fairly often, so he stopped obsessing over them. A friend told me he couldn't believe what the senior officer had told him. But in the end, he had to accept his explanation. Then, just a few days ago, I met up with that old friend again. We were talking about the recent cases HED handled. He mentioned one accident on a regular street involving 3 cars and a pedestrian. 5 people died in the crash. What surprised him was that all 5 victims, though different in gender and age, had names that were pronounced exactly the same. He laughed it off, saying the world is full of strange coincidences. Seems like my cop friend had come a long way in handling those kinds of weird cases. But I'm not a cop. I can't get used to coincidences like that. I think behind some of those strange patterns, there might be something supernatural at work, or maybe not. I have a cop friend, and these stories came from him. One time we went out drinking, and I was curious about his job, so I grilled him with questions like if HED ever seen dead bodies directly. He told me HED seen more than most people, and shared some strange things about what happens to people after they die. Just listening to him made my skin crawl. He said he was used to it after a while, but one thing he still couldn't get over was the smell, the odor at some death scenes that could ruin your appetite for days. That smell leaves a psychological scar. But for him, this was all part of the job. You have to face it every day. Still, throughout his career, one case stood out as the strangest and most unbelievable. Here's how it went one day. He got a report that someone had called the police from near where he and his junior officer were. The call center told him the caller was a man, but his voice was muffled and unclear. At first, the call taker couldn't understand what the man was saying. The operator asked him to speak more clearly, but the man just kept mumbling, repeating the same thing over and over. Finally, the line suddenly went dead. They tried calling back right away, but he didn't answer. Using a reverse lookup, they discovered the number was registered to an address the man had mentioned, a certain apartment building in Tokyo. The call center staff thought something might be wrong, so they sent him and his junior to check it out. They arrived at the address and rung the bell several times, but no one answered. They knocked a few times. Still nothing. The door was locked tight. With no other option, they asked the building manager to try contacting the tenant. Neither the tenant's cell phone nor the apartment phone answered. They were forced to ask the manager to open the door. Once inside, they found a body. The tenant lived alone, so no one had noticed anything unusual. At the time, the officer found the situation strange, and he wondered who had really made the call. Before backup arrived, they did a quick inspection of the apartment. No other people inside. No signs of break-in. Then he noticed the phone by the wall had a call log feature. He checked the records. The first missed call was from the building manager. Next was the missed call back from the call center after the initial 110 call. And the last was the emergency call to 110 itself. Seeing all this, his gut told him maybe this was an elaborate setup. Was it murder staged to look like something else? But after the investigation, once all the forensic evidence and autopsy reports came back, It was clear the tenant had lived alone. The cause of death was a sudden illness. Homicide was completely ruled out. When he asked about the phone logs, no one could make sense of it. It was just an unexplainable mystery. The case was closed as a natural death. He told me after going through that, he finally accepted that some supernatural things are real. This happened more than 20 years ago, from a case I personally experienced. That time, someone reported an unidentified body found. We arrived at the scene. The victim was a woman, stabbed all over and with her face smashed by a blunt object. The sight was horrifying, truly something no one should have to see. At the time, there was no physical evidence left behind, and so the case was treated as a murder investigation. But with such limited leads, no clues, no trace of identity, it was really tough to make progress. My friend, who was in charge of the investigation, spent every day staring at the victim's crime scene photos. He told me he was determined to solve the case and catch the killer. Then, one night when I was asleep, I had a strange dream. I saw a woman whose face was mangled, just like the victim's. In the dream, she caught the culprit and said the murderer was a relative of her husband. Then I woke up. The dream felt so odd to me. I tried to brush it off, thought maybe I just spent too much time thinking about the case during the day, so it spilled into my dreams. But the next night, the same dream happened again. Only this time, the woman's battered face seemed to have started healing a little. From then on, every night this woman appeared in my dreams, and each time, her face looked more and more restored, like it was gradually recovering. After about a week, her face had returned to a pretty appearance, and I memorized her image clearly. The next day, I started cross-referencing missing persons reports from the county and nationwide, comparing their faces to the woman in my dreams, and sure enough, her face showed up among the missing persons files. Using that clue, they finally identified the victim. After that, the case was cracked. The killer, just like the woman in my dreams said, was her husband's lover. It's incredible, right? If every victim could appear in our dreams like that, maybe there'd be a lot fewer unsolved cases. I have an old classmate who became a police officer. Even though we don't see each other often, I heard something during a reunion that stuck with me. My friend's family was really poor, but he was serious about his future. To go to college in Tokyo, he used a newspaper company's scholarship program working while studying. That scholarship worked like this: the company paid upfront for tuition, and the student delivered newspapers to earn their wage. Part of the pay was deducted to cover the scholarship advance, and whatever remained was for living expenses. The company also provided a free single room, so he didn't have to worry about rent. And after graduation, there was no debt. But the catch was it was really tough. He'd get up at 5 in the morning every day, deliver the early edition, then attend classes, and after school, deliver the evening edition. His student life was exhausting, with no time or energy left for hanging out with friends. He told me he wouldn't recommend that scholarship to anyone else. It really wasn't for everyone. But the hardest part wasn't just the deliveries, it was collecting payments from subscribers. Usually, delivery companies don't make students do that job. But at his place, students were asked to collect overdue payments too. The worst part was the company's rule, but if they didn't collect at least 80% of the total payment amount, they wouldn't get a salary. Since hitting 80% every time was tough, he often had to advance his own salary to cover the missing amount, essentially paying out of his own pocket to make up the difference. He planned to slowly collect the unpaid money himself later on, going door to door. Most of those attempts were in early Sunday mornings or late at night times, when delinquent subscribers might be home. He said some of those houses smelled awful, their stench kind of like something rotten, but not quite the same, though disgusting. It was mixed with a strange sweet scent. Every time he encountered such a place, he thought, How can people live surrounded by this weird mix of sweet and foul smells? After working for a while, the company switched his delivery area. He changed zones 3 times before graduating. Each zone had about 200 subscribers, and in every area, there was always one house emitting that same strange sweet minus stinky odor. So he figured this was normal, about one such household per 200. Despite the hardship, he was determined to become a civil servant who wouldn't have to worry about money. So after graduation, he joined the police force. Once, he and a senior officer went to a murder scene, and there he smelled that very familiar odor, the mix of sweet and rotten.